We got a great one today, Badger fans. Let's talk about some industry thoughts on Tyler Van Dyke, some of the top Badger players coming back from last year. We have somebody coming on that I'm really excited to talk to. We've had him on the show before. Let's get into it. Today's Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. Thank you for making this one of your first listens every day. And it's very appreciated as we continue to build this community up. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And we get great guests on, man. We don't waste time because we're here to talk to Max Chadwick. That is Pro Football Focus's college football analyst. Been on the show before talking Braylon Allen. Max, thank you for jumping back on, my friend.
No, thanks for having me on again, man. I'm pumped to talk to you.
Let's talk Badgers. The last time we were on, we talked Braylon Allen. Really quickly, we have a bunch we want to get into, but I just want to start there. Does that feel like a good draft spot for him? Fourth round Jets. Is that about where you thought he would end up?
Yeah, about where I thought he'd end up. The Jets are an interesting team for him because I think they have a loaded backfield. I mean, they really do. They got Breece Hall there. They also drafted Isaiah Davis, who's a really good player as well. I think Braylon Allen most likely, as of right now, will be more of a short yardage guy that they use and more of a goal line guy. So maybe in a fantasy football perspective, he might score a lot of touchdowns next year. But I think I don't know if he's going to get too much more than that, at least to start his career, because of how, like I said, how loaded that backfield is. But he should at least get some goal line carries and some short yardage work as well.
Dude definitely has the feel of a vulture that Breeze, Hall owners are going to absolutely despise next year. Like 4 touchdowns, right? All right, let's talk Tyler Van Dyke. So this is something Badger fans are pretty split on to some degree. Obviously, coming over from Miami, transfer portal edition. Last year's transfer portal edition of Tanner Mordecai for the Badgers didn't really come to fruition like a lot of us had hoped. There were some growing pains there. I just want to start with initially thoughts on Tyler Van Dyke and then maybe get into his fit at Wisconsin. What are your thoughts on Tyler Van Dyke after seeing him for a couple years at Miami?
I think he's pretty good. I think he gets a little bit too much of a bad rap right now. I actually think he had a really good year this past season. He actually had an 85.3 passing grade, which is really, really solid. The problem with him is that he's just so hot and cold. He started off the year on fire. He looked unbelievable to start the season. In fact, he was one of the highest graded quarterbacks over the first 5 or 6 weeks of the year. Then after that, he had a 3-game stretch against Virginia, NC State, and Florida State, where he graded out at 54.2, 46.9, 60.2. So there are stretches of Tyler Van Dyke where you're like, okay, that's why he was talked about as a first-round caliber quarterback. And then there are stretches where you're like, man, I don't even know if this guy should be starting right now. So he's a very hot and cold quarterback. He's a big quarterback with a big arm. He's 6'4", 230, massive, massive right arm. He can make every throw on the field, basically. Not going to add anything really as a runner, but I do like him a lot, and I do think that was a pretty good get for Wisconsin in the portal. I know people are split on him, and I understand why, but I'm one of the people that at least, I'm not saying he's going to be a first-round pick like we thought he was going to be a couple years ago, but I do think he is a really solid college quarterback. So I think Wisconsin got a really good get, I think, in the portal and TVD.
Yeah, you mentioned the arm. Are you familiar with baseball's grading scale, like a 0 to 80 for different tools? Okay. If you had to grade the arm 0 to 80, what would you grade it? Again, 80 is like the top of the board tool.
Yes. So just in college football, right? Not just in not counting like Pat Mahomes or anything like that. Okay.
Of Division I Power 4 conferences.
Fair. Okay, we'll do that. Okay, I like. I would say 65, 70. Like I think that's around the range that I would say for him. I think he's got. Like I said, he's got a rocket, man. The problem is that sometimes it's really inaccurate, and he's a statue. Like, he really is. So he's not going to add anything as a runner. If you don't have a good O-line protecting him, it's going to be problems back there because he's not going to be able to move too well outside of the pocket. But he does have a really good arm. He's a classic pocket passer, and he's got that big frame, big arm. So yeah, I think a 65, 70 is what I'd probably say out of all the power forward quarterbacks in terms of his arm strength. He definitely has one of the stronger arms in college football right now.
Let me ask you this. When you go under the hood with Van Dyke a little bit, and you mentioned the incredibly hot start and then kind of the 3-game kind of slump, is there anything under the hood that's dragging those numbers down from the PFF perspective?
Yeah, I think he sometimes, man, he had 24 big-time throws and 13 turnover-worthy plays. I mean, you mentioned that 3-game stretch. That Virginia game, he had 3 turnover-worthy plays and 0 big-time throws. That NC State game, he had 4 turnover-worthy plays and 2 big-time throws. And then Florida State game, he had 1 turnover-worthy play and 0 big-time throws. So the problem with him is that sometimes he just doesn't see the defenders like he should be seeing out there. He makes some head scratching decisions. He has a huge arm. Sometimes he thinks he could make every throw on the field, even when instead of he's swinging for home runs sometimes when he should be taking singles and doubles out there. Is sometimes what gets him into trouble sometimes. But he did cut down the turnover-worthy play rate by a lot. The year before, it was a really huge issue. This past year, like I said, 24 big-time throws and 13 turnover-worthy plays is a pretty good rate there. So he looked great to start the year, had a 3-game slump, and then he actually played pretty well down the last couple of games of the season. So it's just the roller coaster of Tyler Van Dyke that you're trying to ease up right now. You're trying to get him to play consistently throughout the whole season and not have those the whole month where he just it can't really seem to hit anyone. You're trying to get rid of that right now, because if you got rid of those 3 games, I mean, he'd probably be one of the top quarterbacks in college football.
Yeah, I love this. I feel like I could do this whole show on Tyler Van Dyke. There's other guys I want to get into, but I want to still go here for a second, because I know somebody's going to be listening to this and they're going to say, what's a big time throw?
Yes, good question. Okay, so I can explain both of them to you. Big time throw and turnover-worthy plays. I'm sure the latter is pretty self-sufficient. But so we grade every play on a -2 to +2 scale in half a point increments. So basically what that means is +2 is like, okay, that's the best possible play you could have made. -2, opposite. It's the worst possible play. And then like a +1 is a really good play. +1.5 is an unreal great play. Half a point is like, okay, you went above and beyond your job a little bit. You get a 0 for just doing your job, basically. So big time throws are throws that would get a +1, I believe, or better on the scale, or what we constitute as a big time throw. So any throw pretty much downfield, maybe tight, not wide open, a little bit of tight coverage, great throw, like you put exactly where it needs to be. That constitutes kind of a big time throw for us. So turnover worthy play is the exact opposite, where if you throw it at a linebacker right in the chest and he drops it, that's still a turnover worthy play. Even though it goes down in the stat sheet as an incompletion, that's still a play that was worthy of being a turnover. Now, other side of that, if you throw a beautiful ball down the field, 40 yards downfield, lands right in the breadbasket of your receiver, he just tips it up in the air and the defender catches it, even though it goes down as an interception in the stat sheet, that'll go down as a big time throw for the quarterback, because it was a perfect throw by him and not a turnover worthy play. So it's kind of a little bit of both. So that way it kind of gives more context to stats and simply passing yards and interceptions, because those don't always tell the whole story with players. So yeah, that's why big time throws and turnover worthy plays I think are better to look at than just simply touchdown passes and interceptions.
Yeah, I love the context behind it. Again, you're talking more process than result, right? If you continually that process up, the results are going to generally fall. It's again, not to turn this into a baseball show, but it's a very baseball way of looking at analysis.
Exactly.
Let me ask you this. And again, I definitely appreciate the time here. Where does 24 big time throws, and every offense throws it differently. Maybe there's a percentage, like what percentage of his throws are big time throws, but where does that kind of stack up when you look at college football quarterbacks across Power 4 conferences?
Yes, I actually am pulling that up for you 1 second. So give me 1 minute. But I can tell you it's pretty good. I mean, that's like, again, like I think Miami sometimes just didn't let him use it as much as last year. But in terms of big time throw percentage, he was 9th in the Power 5 in big time throw rate last year. So 6.9%, that's really good. So and then he had a 3.5% turnover worthy play rate, which was at 40th in the Power 5. So again, it's a little hot and cold. That's what I was saying before. 40th out of 80 qualifying Power 5 quarterbacks. So a little hot and cold with Tyler Van Dyke. That again, the turnover worthy play rate was great, a lot better than it was in 2022. 2022 was kind of a mess. He had way more turnover worthy plays and the big time throws. But this past year, he actually did pretty solid. So yeah, like I said, he makes some unreal throws at a very, very high rate. Just he's kind of like an average quarterback right now in terms of avoiding the negative ones right now.
All right, last thought on Tyler Van Dyke, I promise, because again, I could do an entire show on this. But what do you expect from him this year? Whether it's a statistical thing or just a general perspective you're looking for from him in this Wisconsin offense?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't think the receiving corps is as talented as what he had in Miami. He had some really, really good players at Miami. They actually still have there at with the Hurricanes right now. So I don't think the receiving corps is as good. I do like him more in a pro style offense. And I'm just gonna be curious to see, how they run that offense this year. Kind of ran like an air raid-ish offense last year. I wonder if they're going to do a little bit more pro style stuff with Van Dyke this year. But I mean, just take advantage of his big arm, man, and let him throw down the field. Like that's really what you want to be doing with him, and maybe not make as many reads, I think is another key thing too. Like don't make him think too much out there. Just let him grip it and rip it, honestly, is kind of probably the best way to play Tyler Van Dyke. Because then, when he's trying to make too many reads and not seeing defenders, that's when he can get into trouble sometimes. But if you give him like a pretty simple system that lets him attack down the field, I think that's probably the best way for the Badgers to go about it next year.
I love it, man. All right, we're going to take a quick break, come back with Max. We're talking about Hunter Wohler, Ricardo Hallman, Riley Mahlman, a bunch of guys that he's pretty high on for this Badger team. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the number one source if you're trying to bring in the right talent for your organization. And listen, that's what this show is about a lot. It's about talent acquisition. It's about recruiting. It's about finding the right fits, the right people. That's why LinkedIn is our official sponsor for talent acquisition, because that's what they do on the professional side. You got to find the right talent. Let LinkedIn help you as a hiring manager. You got to find the right job. Let LinkedIn help you as a job seeker. The best professional network you can possibly be a part of, with screening tools to get rid of all the riffraff. Keep them outside the door. Send them to the rival company, right? Let them do the work over there. You get the right people in the door and help your company rise, because every hire is a high-stakes wager in today's competitive business landscape and competitive business world. Right now, LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, let's get back to Chad. Our Max. Sorry, I almost called you Chad because your last name's Chad, and I switched the names around.
All my friends call me Chad a lot of times too. So my social media handle for a long time, it still was on Instagram actually, is Chad Maxwick, because that was my nickname in high school. So yeah, I don't take offense if people call me Chad at all. Don't worry about it.
And I want to go there. Like, where can people find the great work and the quality content that you have?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Max Chadwick CFB. You could find it at pff.com. We're kind of going through a 2025 NFL draft series right now. We're kind of the 10 players to know at every single position for the 2025 NFL draft. That's what I'm working on right now. And then I also host the PFF College Football Show, which you can find on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. For that right now, we're going through the top 10 players in the country at every single position. Then we're going to do season previews for every Power 4 team. It's going to be a really busy offseason, that's for sure, for us at PFF.
That's amazing. And we're definitely going to link that show in the show notes when this releases. So make sure you go check out Max's work over there. And speaking of that top 10 list and some of those top 10 lists, I want to go to a spot that maybe traditionally Wisconsin isn't represented on those lists. Let's start at cornerback. Let's start in the defensive back room. Hunter Wohler, safety coming back. Thoughts on his year last year and his game overall?
I think he's one of those underrated safeties in college football. Honestly, you don't really hear his name brought up too much when you're talking about the top safeties, and I think he is a top 10 safety in college football right now. We have a stat. You brought up baseball a lot. I know WAR is a big stat in baseball. Well, PFF is actually trying to make a WAR for football as well, and we have it for NFL and college. Wohler was actually the second most valuable safety in the country last year, according to our wins above average metric. So he had an 89.9 coverage grade, only behind Tyler Nubin. Among all safeties in the country. And Nubin, I thought, was by far the best safety in college football last year, too. So really good run defender. He had 11 tackles for loss / no gain, most among Power 5 safeties, 28 run defense stops, second most among Power 5 safeties. I think he's a really good downhill player who also can make some unreal plays on the back end as well. I think he's a top 10 safety in the country. And I think he's one of the more underrated players in college football, too.
So let me ask you this quick. And according to the metric, wins above replacement, average WAR, second best safety in the country last year. You have him at 8th right now on the 2025 list, right? Or the 2024 list coming in. What is there something in his game you look at and you're like, if he could just be a tick better there?
Yeah, I think he's a great downhill safety. I mean, putting him 8th in this list is almost like a disservice to him, because it's ridiculous how many good safeties are coming back in college football right now. So and a lot of it is projection as well. Whereas I think he's like kind of maxed out right now. I think this is what he's going to be. Whereas there are other safeties that are almost just as good as him that I think still have a whole another way to get better. So that's why I put him that low on the list, if you want to put it that way. But I think as a deep safety, he's just not as dynamic as maybe some other players. Don't get me wrong, he has made some unreal plays as a free safety before, but I like him more as more of like a box safety where he can really let his run defense shine. And they're just other players I think were better as true center fielders than Hunter Wohler last year. So that's probably why he was number 8 on my list. And like I said, the potential of other guys is just a little bit more too. But like I said, safety, running back and safety are probably the two strongest positions in college football right now. So a guy being number 8 at safety list this year, I mean, he would have been like probably number 4 last year. That's just how good the safety class is in college football right now.
Well, let's take that one step further. The safety class in the Big Ten, obviously helped by Caleb Downs coming to Ohio State, the transfer portal. Like, how deep is this Big Ten safety class?
Oh, dude, it's ridiculous. So Caleb Downs was my number 1 safety in the country, Ohio State. Dylan Thieneman, Purdue true freshman last year, number 3 on my list. Then you got Kevin Winston Jr. out of Penn State, number 5 on my list. Xavier Nwankpa from Iowa at number 6. Rod Moore from Michigan at number 7. Hunter Wohler from Wisconsin at number 8. And then Quinn Schultz from Iowa as an honorable mention as well. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of guys. And Keon Sabb from Michigan, who transferred over to Alabama, was my top 10 as well. Makari Page, I didn't even mention. He's a really good safety as well. It's insane. And I know Rod Moore tore his ACL in practice, and he's going to be out until at least November probably, so that's a brutal loss. But, I mean, even without him, the Big Ten still has some of the best safeties in college football. Like, I'm at 2 of the top 3, like I just said, 3 of the top 5, 4 of the top 6, 5 of the top 7, 6 of the top 8. It is pretty insane, man. So 6 of the top 8 safeties in the country, in my opinion, are from the Big Ten. It's kind of nuts that one conference has that many top-end players at that position.
No, it's insane. The depth there is ridiculous. And we're, especially like you said, where you can have, and we talked about this before the show, where you can have a guy of Wohler's caliber who's like the 5th-ish best safety per, in potentially in the conference is crazy. So
he might be like a 3rd-team All Big Ten member next year, and he might be like a 4th-team All American or something like that. Like, it's just like insane how good that conference is at safety.
All right, let's shift to his running mate in the secondary. Let's shift to Ricardo Hallman, who you had an honorable mention. Obviously, had 7 interceptions last year, a little bit of an undersized cornerback. I talked on my show at length, interceptions to some degree. There is a luck dependency there. It's hard to replicate those type of numbers, but it's also reflective of zone awareness, hands, being in the right spot, anticipation, reading quarterbacks. What do you think of Ricardo Hallman's game?
Yeah, I think, you mentioned how interception luck is real, and I think that's totally true. And that's why, corner is one of the most volatile positions in football, where it's just like every year, like you look at Kalen King, for example. Kalen King going into the year was seen as a top 15 pick, had a really bad year, and now he was a 7th round pick. So, like, it really is a volatile position. But Ricardo Hallman, what he has, man, incredible ability to read the quarterback's eyes and get in front of the ball, even when it's not even his receiver sometimes. Like, some of his picks weren't even the receiver he was guarding. It was just he was so smart and saw, hey, I know this ball is going here, went off his man and found the football. So, like I said, tied the nation lead with 7 interceptions. He had a 37.4 passer rating allowed, which was 9th among FBS corners. It really killed me not putting him in the top 10, honestly, because he had the production to do it. Again, corner is another super strong position in college football. I mean, really the entire defensive side of the ball is ridiculously loaded in college football right now. But Ricardo Hallman definitely deserved that honorable mention nod that he got.
Well, let me ask you this quick on Hallman too. And we agree, like certainly fumbles forced, interceptions, a lot of that stuff, it varies incredible from year to year, even with the same talent, the same unit, the same schedules. But there is also an element of you don't luck yourself into 7 picks.
No, you don't. You don't at all. And I think that's another thing too, is like I said, he just reads the quarterback's eyes so well. And he's such a smart, heady football player, which is what I think makes him what made him ball hawk last year, was that he knows where the football's going at almost all times. So I think he's a pretty average athlete overall. But like I said, the size is definitely going to be an issue for him going into the NFL as of right now. But I mean, as a pure college corner, I mean, he is one of the best ball hawks in the country for sure, if not the best.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. This is awesome stuff. We're going to talk about Riley Mahlman, and I'm going to get Max's thoughts, a little big picture on the Big Ten, maybe the 4 new teams coming in from the Pac. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Yahoo Finance, one of our great sponsors and somebody that helps make these shows possible. Yahoo Finance is basically gives me a dashboard, right? It helps collate and bring all of my financial information together under one dashboard, which is incredibly helpful for me. It reduces confusion. It makes my life easier, and it helps me grow my portfolio. They also have great editorial content. I've used them recently because I'm buying a house, right? So I've used them to look up some real estate advice, real estate articles. That content is updated daily. It's really sharp. It's really on point. Anything you need from the financial sector, you can go find at Yahoo Finance. Make your life easier as an investor. Make it easier to grow your portfolio. Make your life a little less stressful on the financial side with Yahoo Finance. Comprehensive financial news analysis. Visit the brand behind every great investor. That's yahoofinance.com. your number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. All right, let's come back with Max. Again, great guest, man. I could keep you for more than 30 minutes. But if I do, maybe you won't come back again. So I have to keep these on good short notice.
This is fun, man. I'm having a good time with you.
Riley Mahlman. So it's interesting to me. Mahlman, I feel like when you talk to Badger fans in general, more of the focus goes to the left tackle, Jack Nelson. He was a 4-star guy originally. He's kind of been on the radar a little bit longer, struggled a little bit last year. Pro Football Focus, Riley Mahlman had the better year of those two last year.
Yeah, and you're right. When you talk about offensive tackles, rarely do you look at the right tackle. It's usually always a left tackle that people always assume is the better player out of the two of them. But I think Riley Mahlman is the better player, and I think it's becoming a theme now in football where it's like, man, it doesn't even. The whole left tackle is more valuable than right tackle thing is one of the most overrated things in football. It really isn't that much of a difference at all, really. And you're seeing now, top right tackles are going high in the draft now and getting paid a lot. Penei Sewell is the highest paid tackle in the league right now. He's a right tackle for the Lions. So the right tackle, left tackle thing, it's basically non-existent. That doesn't matter at all. Riley Mahlman, though, is a terrific right tackle. He's 6'8", obviously, so he towers over defensive linemen. Missed nearly half of his redshirt freshman year last year, took a major leap as a redshirt sophomore this past season. Again, to mention that wins above average metric, he was the 7th most valuable tackle in the country this past season in that wins above average metric. 78.1 grade, top 15 among Power 5 tackles, 73.1 run blocking grade, again, top 15 among Power 5 tackles. Also was among the 20 best tackles in the Power 5 in terms of pressure rate allowed at 3%. So, he was an all Big Ten member for us this past year as well. I think he's one of the best right tackles that we have in college football right now.
Let me ask you about wins above replacement here. And that I feel like that could take an entire episode to unpack to some degree. But can you give a quick synopsis of how you're trying to figure that out for an offensive tackle specific, or maybe an offensive lineman in general, or?
Yeah. So wins above replacement basically a lot of it is up to our grading. Obviously a guy who grades out really highly is going to be up there. Also, how much you impact a play. So maybe you get a good. Some guys get good grades on a play that they're just not really. Even if they didn't do their job, maybe it doesn't really affect the play that much. But if you're like, say, as an offensive tackle, if you're making a key lead block in the run game, you're going to get a high grade. You're going to that's a big value play for your team. So that's key too. So it's kind of a little bit of both of, okay, who's grading out well, and how important was that grade to the success of the play? That's what we're trying to quantify really with wins above replacement. It's a very, very hard problem to crack and solve, but it's a really cool metric to look at. And, not only look at, okay, who's the highest graded player? Sure. But also who's the most valuable as well. Because sometimes a guy has a 90 grade, but he plays 300 snaps, and he's probably not as valuable as a guy who grades out maybe at 86, but plays 900 snaps, so it's a little bit of that too. Okay, do you play a lot? How important are you to that play? So a lot of that goes into the wins above replacement metric. So again, very complicated, and I'm sure I'm not the best guy to be going about this because I didn't develop the metric, and there's a lot of other people at PFF that are way smarter than I am that can go over it in way more depth with you. But it is a really, really cool metric that I think football's been missing for a while in terms of assigning value to players. And I think we're trying to solve that problem right now with our wins above replacement and wins above average metrics.
That's awesome. Really quick, I want to get your big picture thoughts on Big Ten to kind of take us up the door here. With the 4 Pac-12 schools coming in, Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, which of those schools should the Big Ten be most scared of? And then which of those schools should be most wary of the Big Ten?
I think it's the first question is not even close. I think Oregon is a top 3 team in college football next year, I think. And Dan Lanning's got that program humming right now. I mean, they're not going away anytime soon. So I think Oregon and Ohio State are 2 of the top 3 teams in college football. And when they play each other, I forgot what week it is exactly, but when they play each other, I think that's the biggest game of the year, honestly. I think I think there's a pretty clear top 3 in the nation, and they're 2 of them. So I think those are 2 national title contenders. So I think Oregon is definitely my pick. I think Dylan Gabriel might even be a Heisman pick, honestly. I think he's going to have a big year for the Ducks next year at quarterback. The most weary, I think UCLA is going to have a rough go of it for a little bit. I think USC has enough talent offensively to really give Big Ten teams some trouble. Washington lost a ton, but they still have some I like Jed Fish a lot, and they brought in some good players. So they'll be okay. I don't know if they'll be a top 25 team again next year, but they'll be okay. UCLA, I'm kind of worried about though. They lost a lot of talent. Obviously, Chip Kelly left to be Ohio State's offensive coordinator. He's got a brand new head coach, and Deshaun Foster as well, who gets promoted from being an assistant coach, position coach. I think UCLA, they might struggle. They might struggle a lot next year in the Big Ten. Now, I think down the line they could become a good program again, but as of right now, I'm a little worried about UCLA making the transition pretty smoothly in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on Oregon too. That team's a monster. We got to play them this year, but at least we get them in Camp Randall. But that team's a monster. I kind of think USC, when you look at some of their struggles at times with physicality, like with Utah, I think the conference might be a little bit of a body blow theory to them. They might get beat up a little bit more than they anticipate, but I always anticipate Lincoln Riley's going to have a good quarterback, and that's the equalizer.
Yeah, exactly. And they always have an electric pass. I mean, that's the thing too. Is like people are like, oh, dude, USC is going to get bodied in the Big Ten. They're going to get destroyed. I'm like, dude, sure. Like, yeah, in the trenches they might struggle a little bit, but also like imagine like, I mean, look at how much Big Ten teams struggle against Ohio State's receivers and passing game. It's like, okay, that's really what USC is as well. So, yeah, it's a little bit of that, but also like, dude, they can race you out of the gym too. So it's not like it's a little bit of both. Whereas like, okay, yeah, maybe you might be able to punch them in the mouth a little bit, but they're going to go over the top on you and beat you that way too. So, that's why I think USC is going to be okay. Is that they're going to, they have the horses offensively to really make a good impact in the Big Ten pretty quickly. So I think, yeah, USC with the Zachariah Branch there, Miller Moss there. I mean, you mentioned, Lincoln Riley's quarterback since he became a head coach at Oklahoma was Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, and then you had Spencer Rattler for a year, and then Caleb Williams. Yeah. I mean, those are all like NFL quarterbacks. So, and Heisman Trophy winners. 3 of them won a Heisman Trophy as well. So, and Jalen Hurts finished in second for the Heisman Trophy, and now NFL franchise quarterback, one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. So, it's insane. I mean, it's insane the run he's had, and Miller Moss is next up for them. I don't know if he'll hit those highs that those other guys did, but yeah, I think USC will be just fine. They made some really great hires defensively. Danson Lynn at defensive coordinator from UCLA. He's one of the best DCs in the country last year. I think the defense could be improved. It definitely is hard not to go for anywhere but up after last year, but I'm excited to see what USC can do now in the Big Ten.
All right, last question here, get you out the door. Anybody we talked about today or anybody else on the Badgers roster, who is the highest draft pick that comes off this roster?
Ooh, highest draft pick.
This is the guy with the highest NFL upside.
Okay, I'm going to look through real quick. I think, that's a really good question, actually. I think Riley Mahlman might be my answer. I think he could be a 3rd or 4th round pick, probably. So I'll go with him. There are definitely some other guy. I think Jack Nelson still might have a lot of fans in the NFL circles. John Pius from the edge defender. Ricardo Hallman, too. And then obviously our guy, Hunter Wohler, a guy that could really surprise a lot of people next year, too. So those are some of the guys I would say right now. But I think out of all of them, Riley Mahlman, the right tackle, is probably my pick for the highest drafted player out of Wisconsin next year.
I love it, man. He is Max Chadwick, dropping just complete knowledge and being a complete joy to have on the show as always. Go follow his work over at Pro Football Focus at Max Chadwick CFB. Thank you again for joining us, my friend.
Dude, of course, anytime.
Let's do it again during the season at some point. We'll break it down.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Really do appreciate it. Go check out Max's work, and we'll talk tomorrow.